See if this works. Maybe not. Hey, what's up? I'm...
All right.
So we are live. All right. Let's see. Neil's here. All right, is the audio good for everybody? Okay. All right, well, I'm Dallas Wade, and I'm here with my friend and family, Travis. We grew up going to the same church, same denomination, same town, and we both had different spiritual journeys away from Christianity, but both started at the same place and basically ended at the same place.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about Travis's deconversion story.
All right. So basically, I just had a few issues as I was growing up. I remember that I just couldn't really put my finger on, as I was studying the Bible, because at this point in time I was 8 years old.
No.
And everybody around me, and I think had my 3 brothers as well as a couple of cousins that also went, and you as well. So everybody was getting baptized all about the same time. And I remember there was this pressure to join the rest of the group. It wasn't like nobody was holding me down or anything, but it was like, when are you going to get baptized? It was everything everybody asked about.
I remember that.
Yeah. So it was definitely this pressure, a social pressure.
A lot of pressure.
And I remember asking my mom about it, and she would say, well, just, whenever you're ready. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And she was like, well, it's whenever you realize that you know the word and you know what it means to be baptized. And I was like, okay. And so then, a few years later, I started studying on that and trying to figure out, what it was. And I remember I was in public school, so I wasn't homeschooled.
Right.
And so it was every other week or two, there would be a group of friends, whether it was yours or whether it was another group over here or over there. It was there was all these, because everybody was in groups in high schools, the rednecks are over here, the jocks, and
yeah.
So then they, every now and then, about once a week or so, you'd have these people come up and be like, oh, I got an announcement to make, everybody. This person the other day got saved. They accepted Jesus into their heart. And so then I started wondering about it. I was like, well, wait, you didn't get baptized? And so I started noticing these differences, because primarily all the people who went to school at West Point with me went to West Point First Baptist.
Right, they weren't Church of Christ.
Yeah, and so there was all these little things that they could do that we couldn't do.
Yeah.
And it was really strange, because I often would go to church with one of my friends, and they would always wear shorts at church.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to wear shorts at church because it was hot in the summertime. It was awful. And so, but we weren't allowed to at our church. They would tell us, don't come if you're going to, wear shorts.
Even the guys.
Yeah. And so it was silly, because it was why can't I wear shorts? And I remember asking them about it, and they were like, well, it's disrespectful. And I was like, well, what if I'm not trying to be disrespectful about it? Why can't I just wear shorts and not be disrespectful?
About what age were you at this point?
I think I was 10, at this point. And so they were like, well, if you're going to wear shorts, they were like, they kind of compromised. It was I guess it's okay as long as you sit in the back and you don't participate in anything.
Yeah. And
one of the big pressures about it was to participate in stuff, to lead singing or, do things like that. And I remember I kind of wanted that. That was part of the drive to do it, was that, my brother or other of my cousins were getting up and doing the leading singing one night, and they got to choose which songs they liked. And so I wanted to be able to do that. They got to do the Lord's Supper, and, and I wanted to do that too. And I couldn't do it if I was wearing shorts. And so they just had this whole dynamic that started causing me to question, why can I not do this? Why can I not do that? What's the problem with this? Everybody else does it.
Yeah.
And then after I kind of got I ended up getting baptized about that time when I was 10.
10.
And I knew what it meant and everything, but I still felt uneasy about it all. I felt like there was just something I couldn't put my finger on, but it was just strange that I was like, I don't know about this. You know what I mean? And so then I started, like, as I got older, I think I got to where I was about 12 is where it started, like, clicking.
Yeah.
And I started having problems with little things in the Bible that just didn't make sense. Like when Adam and Eve got kicked out of the garden and they went and they were like, you have to join the rest of these people. I was like, wait, I thought Adam and Eve were the first people. So there was like all these little things like that. And the biggest one that did it for me was Satan himself was the biggest issue, because there's just 1,001 issues with like him as his like character and his relationship with God, because he was supposed to be like cursed and banished, and that's in Genesis, you know, like he doesn't ever say that he is the old snake in Genesis that tempts Eve. Yeah. But then later on in Revelation, it connects the dots and says that actually was Satan too. And so,
or at least that's the conclusion most Christians make.
Right. And so that's what I remember asking about. I asked my preacher about it, and that's what he said. He said, yes, that was Satan. That we believe that was Satan.
Yeah. It is interesting too, though, with the serpent thing. Like Yahweh himself was represented as a serpent too. You know, when they put the serpent on the pole.
Right. Yeah.
That was supposed to be representative of Yahweh and his salvation, but so I don't know. It's just interesting. You know, people want to assume that the serpent in the garden was Satan, but
like 1,500 years ago, everybody thought it was Lilith. So yeah, I mean,
But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. But.
No, yeah, but so then it was just that I wondered like why like in the book of Job, if he was supposed to be cursed and banished, and he was the mortal enemy and he was the adversary, then why is it in Job where he's up there chilling with God and heaven, like as his right hand man, making bets with him, like over Job's life? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that I had like a whole lot of issues with that, and I think my main issue was why was Satan even there in the first place? Of like, okay, well, if this is the great adversary and he's causing all this badness to your, you know, to your plan, your perfect plan, and he's just running around ruining it, like, why are you allowing him to be alive?
Yeah.
Like, and then I had problems with the whole, there's a, you know, it's not in the Bible, but it's in some of the removed books, of Lucifer trying to overthrow heaven and become like the next god, and he like gets a bunch of angels together and they go try to rally and take on God, and then they get banished out of heaven, right? And so I had this thought process about it that I was like, well, if the only reason I could see for him to even try to attempt that is if God was not all powerful. Because if you knew God like himself and you knew how powerful and all powerful he was, why would you even attempt to try to fight him? Like, and so I had this big problem with that in of itself, and being like, well, he must either not be all powerful. And I talked to a few people about that, and they said it was due to Lucifer's character. And they were like, well, it's because Lucifer was so prideful, he thought he could best him. And I'm like, I don't know, there's no way.
No.
And so I came to the conclusion that either he was not all powerful, or that he was not all good, because of like the things that happened with Job as well. Like, why would you allow somebody to go through torture just to make a bet with somebody? And your mortal enemy, your supposed mortal enemy at that. So, I mean, I couldn't understand it, and had too many problems with it that the church could not answer. And then I started learning more and studying more, because I didn't actually leave the church until I was 16. But at this point, when I was 12, is when I had actually deconverted and just had not realized it yet.
Wow, that's really early.
Yeah, and so it wasn't until later on, I think I was 14, when I fully realized I don't actually believe. Like, I'm not actually a Christian anymore. Like, this is not something I want any part of. I don't like the teachings of it, because that's when I started learning about the slavery, like, in the Old Testament. And Yeah, and so there was I just realized right then that I didn't want any more to do with that. I liked the social aspect of it. I liked being able to go to church and see my friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that this wasn't for me. And so then I tried to talk to my mother about it. And because at this point, my older two brothers were now working and in school, so they couldn't attend church anymore. And they did, but when they could.
Yeah.
And
But they still believed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they still believed. And so I then tried to talk to my mother about it and say, well, look, like, I don't want to go to church anymore. And she was not okay with it at all.
No.
She got really mad at me for a while. And then she told me that, like, you can't stop going to church until you're 16. She was like, when you're 16, you can drive yourself, and then it is your decision on whether you want to go to church or not. But until then, you go to church with me. And I was like, well, why? And she was like, well, it's kind of like a part of growing up. She was like, right now your job is you're in school. Like, it's your job to make good grades and have good report cards and do well in school. And that's what you need to worry about. That's your focus. That's your job. And so then once you get out of school, or you become, when you get 16 and you can work a job, then you can realize what having a job is like and why you need to do good at having a job.
Yeah.
And so that was like the set standard that she had made of, like, you have to be 16 before you can decide whether you don't want to go to church or not. And I waited for a little while, and then I tried to talk to her about it again when I was 15, and tried to tell her, look, I was like, it shouldn't be whether or not I'm 15 or 16 or 18. It should be whether or not I'm old enough to understand the teachings and the doctrine and decide for myself if I want to live my life that way, or whether or not, like, I agree with the things that they say in this doctrine. And she just kind of stared at me for like 30 seconds, like blank face, didn't know like what to say at all. And she was like, well, you're going until you're 16. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's pretty much how that went, is I just kept going until I was 16 and got a car. And I remember the first Sunday after I got in the car, she asked if I was going to church, and she had this like look in her face, this like sad, like puppy dog look, like, are you going to church Sunday? And I was like, no.
Wow.
And it just kind of went from there.
So did you ever go back after that, or?
I did a few times. Like, I went a couple of times with my grandmother.
Yeah.
Because it just, really made her happy, and she wasn't doing very well at one point, and I wanted to make sure, like, that I just went with her, like, at least a couple more times before I couldn't anymore. And of course that was a good while ago. It was like 7 years ago. So I mean, she's definitely triumphed and powered through. But so I went a couple of times then, and when I was 17 to 18, about the same time frame, there were girls I would date in school that would be like, well, no, I'm gonna save you. Like, you're going to come to my church, because my church is different. And so I would go. Like, I didn't just, like, turn it down. I was like, well, I mean, I'll go. And so I did, and called them out on it, and I went. And eventually we didn't work. But, I mean, it wasn't just because their church didn't work for me. It was, other reasons as well. But I tried a few of them. I went to a non-denominational with somebody. One that's, like, just up the road from here, in fact.
Yeah.
And I went to this mega church one time that was just, it was strange to me, because, growing up in the Church of Christ, I've never seen people, like, get up and, like, speak in tongue.
Oh, yeah.
And, so it was weird.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if that's not weird for you, like, I mean, that's your thing, but, like, it was weird for me. But, yeah.
No, it is pretty strange. Yeah.
But that's my deconversion story, basically, in a nutshell.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I didn't realize you had quit believing that early.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably didn't have any other friends or family that was on the same page with you.
Well, I think my older brother was going through about the same thing at the time. When I was 14, he was 16, and he wasn't like open about it as I was the difference. But like, I could tell he wasn't really into it anymore, because there were times when he could go and he just didn't, because he was 16, he didn't have to. And so then I had a couple of cousins who were talking about it often amongst themselves, but just between their peers who were also like 16 and 17.
Yeah.
And so they didn't like talk to us about it. But I could see all this happening with different people, and knew that they had similar ideas that I had and similar thoughts that I had. And so I kind of knew like right then that I wasn't alone. I'm not the only one who sees the problems in this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until after I deconverted and stopped going that they would even talk to me about it, because they were worried that they would catch the blame for it, that our family would be like, oh, he did it because you did it first.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but it was, yeah, so I was very much alone for like 2 or 3 years with my thoughts on it.
Yeah. Were you open to anybody besides like your mom and your brothers?
Yeah.
You were?
Yeah. So like I had talked to like, you know, the preacher and other people about like how I felt about it and what I thought about it. And then when I stopped going, my friends at school had even asked me about it. I don't know how they heard about it, but they had asked me about it and was like, what? I heard you stopped going to church. And I was like, well, yeah. And so that became a conversation multiple times. Like,
once you stop going to church, everybody talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it is.
Yes,
You know?
it really was. It was because it like I said, it wasn't like Jesus wasn't talked about like every day at school, like a break and lunch. But whenever somebody did become saved or somebody did do this in the church or blah, blah, they would talk about it then and be like, oh, that's so good. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Like, and that would be the end of it. But then as soon as I stopped going to church, all of a sudden it was like every week, like one day out of the week, she was a friend of mine who we used to kind of like tease at her a little bit about being Jesus crazy. And because like, it's like all she like thought about and all she did, she was just like so immersed. And she would make it a point to talk to me about it at least like once a week, and she would be like, Travis, that's just stupid, just come to my church. And so like she didn't like hear anything out that I had to say about it or like listen to my opinions. She just wanted to talk to me about it and convert me, and then I go to her church and now the world's a little bit brighter because all my friends are now religious. And then she couldn't handle it that she always said that I was like such a really good person, but she couldn't handle it that I was a good person without religion.
Yeah, how can you be a good person and not be a Christian?
So it just like caused like this little fault in her mind of like, this is not okay. This is wrong. My world is wrong.
Yeah.
And so she couldn't handle it. And it was like every week she would make it a point to like talk to me about it. And everybody would, kind of chip in here and there. And some people would be like, well, just, leave him alone. If he doesn't want to go, he doesn't want to go. And so, I mean, it was a thing for sure.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of people who became less friendly to me and pretty much just stopped associating with me because of it as well. Like I had a couple other cousins that I went to school with, and they didn't really like associate much with me anyway. And it kind of all happened around the same time. Because about the time everybody figured out was about the time that I stopped participating in sports. And so I was no longer a jock anymore. And a lot of my friends at that time bullied me a lot. They bullied me over, like, my legs was one of the main things they bullied me about, which was weird, but...
That is weird.
I mean, it's like kids will just find anything to, like, pick on when they want to pick on somebody. And so it was like I was a late bloomer, and I didn't have, like, these super hairy legs yet, like everybody else had.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even have, like, the peach fuzz going on yet like they had. And so they would make fun of me and be like, oh, he shaves, he's gay, he's a girl. And so, like, they would just bully me a lot about it. And... so then eventually I just got tired of getting bullied, and I thought about what I was going to do about it. And one day there was a student who actually was gay, who was openly gay.
Yeah.
And he came walking by, and I felt like they just went over the line because they told him that I was gay and I was interested in him. They were all joking back and forth about it. And then, I don't know, like, I guess he might have got, like, his hopes up about it. And so he, like, approached me later on afterwards, was like, well, I figured it was just your friends, like, messing around, but, like, are you actually gay? Do you want to, like, hang out or something? I was like, no, I'm not gay, dude. Like, I mean, we can hang out, but I'm not gay. Like, and he was like, oh, okay. And then he never talked to me again. I feel like it, like, made him, like, awkward and feel bad. Like, it might have hurt his feelings. And so I felt like that was going over the line, that, like, my friend's, like, personal little inside joke to me was now harming other people.
Yeah.
And so I decided to get new friends, and then I started hanging out on another side, like the whole other side of the of the break area. I just went like completely to the other side of the break area and started hanging out with friends over there. And they were old friends that I had from other schools. And then I was a whole lot happier.
Yeah.
And they didn't like judge me or like pick on me or bully me. Like they, some of them didn't go to church either.
Okay.
So they didn't, they were just non-judgmental, and it was so much happier. I remember like so much stress out of my life was just gone when I went over there and just made new friends.
Yeah.
So it was, but then I saw what happened with a lot of my old friends, because I wasn't in church anymore. I was over there hanging out with the other heathens. And so like they stopped talking to me, a lot of them. And like I said, a couple of like family members I went to school with had stopped talking to me too. And I wasn't sure if it was because of all of it. I didn't really know what exactly it was, but I assumed it was the no church and the no longer in sports. But I mean, it could have been, I don't know. I'm not a mind reader, but
Yeah.
I just assumed it had something to do with that, because those were like the two main things that I heard when people were like talking about me and like doing rumors. Like that's what I heard, was that, oh, he doesn't go to church anymore and he doesn't play sports anymore and things like that. So I wasn't sure what exactly it was, but I just knew that people were now treating me differently because of it. And a lot of people stopped associating with me, and I assumed it was because of that.
Most likely because you weren't going to church. I mean, that's definitely like what I went through once I started going to church, and once everybody started talking about the fact that I didn't believe in Christianity before. Like, Christians are pretty bad. They don't want anything, like, most of them will just completely disassociate from you. Like, and very few of them will even try to, like, save you or bring you back, but
right.
They're just quick to cut ties.
Yeah.
Let you go.
And one of the things that I really didn't like to what we were talking about earlier about things we weren't allowed to do,
Yeah.
was we were not allowed, because like I said, I was a public school student, so our mom would always let us go anyway, but as far as the church was concerned, we should not go to that, and we're not allowed to go to that, was the school dances.
Oh,
so
yeah.
They would say that you shouldn't want to go because it leads you to temptation, is what they would say. And I remember asking about it and being like, well, just because you can't go to a school dance without being tempted doesn't mean that I can't. And I was like, and I mean, I get it. Like, if you see temptation in your path, you're supposed to remove it from your path. But I didn't know why I couldn't go to the school dance, have fun with my friends, and not be tempted and everything be okay. I didn't understand why, if I went, I was definitely going to be tempted. And even if I didn't act on the temptations, I was like, okay, well, then I didn't sin, so why can't I go anyway?
Yeah.
And so I had like just so many issues with not just the doctrine itself, but I could see the lives that other kids were having my age and the things that they could do and that I wasn't able to do because this doctrine was still Christianity, but different than their
Right, because they were
Christianity.
still Christians.
Yes.
They were just allowed to do more stuff.
And they would like go off and do like these trunk or treats and like things like that. And I've never actually done a trunk or treat. Like,
really?
Never. Yeah. I mean, we did like Halloween. We did like the trick or treating, but the trunk or treat was like something that I remember as being like a non-Church of Christ church thing. It was like they would go up there on Halloween and have trunk or treat for all the kids there, so that way they could not only trick or treat, but it'd also have this huge like mega spot of candy they could get. And yeah, so that was just, I don't know, it was just another one of those things. Like, it didn't matter to me that much, but it was just like why don't we do this?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So
you never even like were allowed to go to the trunk or treats that other churches put on?
Well, no, yeah, because later on, like I said, especially after I started having questions, I was discouraged from going to any of my other friends' churches, like, immediately. That happened when I was 12, I think. But when I started, like, having these big questions that they couldn't answer, and they couldn't, like, it felt like their control was slipping, I guess. And so because I used to, like I said, I used to go with my friends to their churches a lot. I used to go to like this Jones Chapel Baptist Church. I would go there a lot with some of my friends. I had a best friend who went to a Methodist church, and that was probably the church I went to the most, besides my own church.
Wow.
Well, I went there a lot.
I'm surprised you were allowed to go to...
Yeah, well, it was like I said, it was earlier on.
Yeah.
It was the thing is, once I started having these questions and having these problems, then it was like
That's
that got
when
revoked.
yeah.
They were like, no, you can't do that anymore. You're having too many bad thoughts. Or,
Yeah.
You know, so it was like there was all these like activities that they would do that I found good, and I remembered I would mention it to them, and I understand like their thinking on it. It was like they had like youth groups, and they'd have like church basketball league,
No.
and they would have like all these like they would celebrate like Easter. They didn't literally celebrate it as Christ's birth like a lot of people do,
But they'd have like a big Easter egg hunt and stuff like that.
Yeah, so they like celebrated all these things at the church, so they didn't just have a celebration at home with their own family, but they had one with their church groups and as a community. And I thought that was really cool. And I wanted to like be there with my friends doing all these things, because a lot of the time I would hear about them from my friends at school and be like, oh yeah, we did this or whatever, like, and I felt like I was missing out on that.
I always felt that way too.
Yeah.
The fact that we didn't have a youth group or didn't have these activities,
Right.
That always sucked.
And so like then I saw another one. I was dating this girl that went to a non-denomination when I was 17. And I had already, stopped, but
Yeah.
they did a fundraiser with their youth group, and I was a part of their youth group while I was dating her. And we were like the older youth group, because we were teenagers. And they did a fundraiser that I actually helped participate in. It was like a car wash and hot dog sale. And they raised enough money to where they could do a vacation they wanted to do. And they had all these pictures on the wall from all these things they had done, because they did like a fundraiser and went somewhere every year. And the point of that was to bring Christ out to these people who didn't like have it.
Yeah.
And so they did a lot of like missionary trips and things like that. And I thought, man, that'd be so cool to like go see another country.
Yeah, I know.
Like something that you worked for, something that you made happen. And it would be just such a good thing. And so even though I was already like deconverted, I was like, that is fantastic. I was like, that's great. And so I participated in it. And this year they wanted to go to a concert. We went down to Birmingham and went to a Christian rock concert, and I had a blast. It was so much fun, and I was just like, I felt like there were so many people missing out on this, because they say, oh, well, it's not in the Bible. It's not okay. You can't do that. Jesus never said it was okay to go to concerts, because that's like how the Church of Christ like fundamentally is. If the Bible doesn't say it, then you can't do it.
Yeah.
And so it was
with
just
certain exceptions.
Yeah, I mean there are some. But
yeah, like air conditioning, we can have that.
Right,
running water. Well,
Yeah, there's certain things that we do need to have.
But guitars and pianos,
no,
you can't do that.
No musical instruments. And I mean, so it was just, I felt like I was missing out on so many things I didn't see the problem with.
Yeah.
And I mean, now that I got older, I understand, like, because I've heard some people like crosstalk about it when I was in high school. And they were talking bad about these other kids' church because they weren't in the Church of Christ like me. And I was like, what's wrong with that? And they were like, well, they're going to church because they can go and play basketball at church, or they can go and do this at church. They're going for the wrong reason. And I was like, well, what if they're just going to church and then they also want to play basketball after? Like, what's the problem with that? Because, I mean, we went and shoot, like, afterwards. We would go to church and then come back home, eat, change clothes, and then go to the gym and shoot the rest of the day until church that night. So I was like, what's the difference? They just have to change at church. Like,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I felt like I was missing out on a lot of things. I felt like their line of thinking was wrong on a lot of things. And I felt like that they were going overboard when they didn't have to. Like, as if they were like, I don't know, I felt like they should have been more lax with it, more relaxed, I felt like they were just being way too uptight and strict about it. And then they were completely shooting down anybody else that didn't agree with them about it. Everybody else was like not going to heaven because they didn't agree with their belief.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel like there was any reason that these people were not going to heaven, like these Baptists and Methodists. Like, I was like, I'd see them all having great fun and they're all talking about Jesus all day, every day. I was like, I don't understand. They're not like running around in sin. They're just doing things a little differently than you are.
Yeah, and generally it was the non-Church of Christ Christians that would talk about Christianity and Jesus a lot more than the Church of Christ did.
Because like I said, it was like a couple of my cousins and a few other people that went to the Church of Christ. They no longer associated with me anymore. But that girl that, we had, kind of teased at every now and then for being Jesus crazy, she talked to me like once a week, and she was a Baptist. So, I mean, she was very open about it, and she would eventually shut down and be like, well, Travis, that's just stupid. You should just come to church with me. Yeah. But she was still very kind about it. She wasn't she was still my friend at the end of the day. She didn't just start not talking to me. And it was the craziest thing, because I would come up to my cousins and come up and try to talk to them, and they would just kind of like, oh, yeah, whatever, and just like walk off. And I was like, what? Yeah. Like, so I felt so like bad because nobody was associating with me anymore. And I don't know, it was just the strangest thing.
Yeah. So when you were 17 and you started dating this one girl and you went to church with her and her youth group, were you like, did you completely like lack your belief in Christianity, or
yes,
you did? So you weren't a Christian at all? But
no, not anymore, not at all.
Did you consider becoming a Christian again while you were going to her church?
I mean, I considered going to church with her as long as I was dating with her. Yeah, I was like, I have no problem like going to this church, even though I did not agree with it. I wasn't a Christian. I was like, well, I have no problem going. Like, I have fun when I go. Yeah. Like, and like half of my friends go to this church. Like, so I mean, I didn't have any problem with it at all. I was actually glad to go. Yeah. And it was something that the Church of Christ definitely could not do. Like, there was like, I mean, because I was not wanting to go to church when I was 14. Yeah. When I was 12, I was already not wanting to go.
Yeah. I kind of had the same thing happen. Like, I still believed in Christianity, but, I was a devout, like, believer up until I was, 18 or so. But, like, when I was 17, I started dating a girl that went to a Baptist church. And I started going to her church too. Okay. And I was still a Christian at the time, but I had never like been as excited to be a Christian as I did when I started going to her church, and I was active in the youth group and stuff. And I had the same feelings like you did. Like, I was like, wow, this is awesome. We're like active. Like we did community events and stuff. And
because I mean, it wasn't just, it was like everything was just better, because it was like, now like nobody's mistreating me. Like, everybody's nice to me now. People are happy to, like, see me, and I get to go and have fun and be with this, like, person that I'm with, and we get to go have fun. And it's, like, because, like, her parents were still, very much like any teenager's parents, where they were, like, you can only go on a date if you go to the movies, and that's, like, it. But anything church-related, like, we could both be there. It was fine. And they were happy about it because I was at their church, not just somebody else's church. Yeah. So it was so much better, and it was like, it just was really nice. I would wake up on Sunday morning like excited to go. Yeah. And so it was, even though I didn't agree with any of the Bible, and I was not a Christian and was very much against it, and I was still just happy to go. And at that point, I would no longer like, because when most people would talk to me about the Bible, I would immediately go to like, oh, well, I don't agree with the Bible's position on slavery and, things like that, and I'd point out all the bad parts of the Bible. But then once I was dating her and I was going to this church, I was happy to be there, and everything was good. So like, I didn't have anything bad to say about it at all. I was just like, well, if you don't want to believe, I mean, that's, it's your thing. Yeah. So, I mean, it didn't like bother me.
Yeah. So how have you been treated by everyone, like in your family? Like, how do they treat you now, years later that you're not a Christian and a bit more outspoken?
Well, I've been met with like a little bit of back and forth. Some of them will make a lot of like snide comments to me here and there. Yeah. And some of them just, are like looking for any opportunity they can to like speak with me about it, even though like, because I mean, some of them I'd be fine with speaking to them about it and like talking back and forth about like my beliefs and like doing study session or whatever, but some of them I would just rather not, and rather avoid that altogether with, because I know it would cause a whole lot of problems and a whole lot of issues within the family. And so there's some of them that have like gave me snide comments here and there, and there's some of them who haven't been, some of them are just kind of in the middle. That's just like, when they see me, they're like, well, you should just, just come to church sometime. And then there's some of them that look for every opportunity to send me something that they saw that they thought like will blow my mind.
Yeah, like some Ray Comfort video or something
Yeah.
like that.
So like there was one where she sent it to me. It was a video of this professor, this college professor.
Oh
And it
no.
was like, he's like, I've done this demonstration every year, and he said something about if anybody believes, stand up now, you're not going to believe at the end of this video. And then everything goes magically right with his presentation the way it never does and never has in like 16 years. And the pencil, he did something about dropping a pencil. I don't remember like what the experiment was, but it was something about I dropped this pencil and it's going to, if it hits my shoe, then God's like real or something. But he always moves his shoe so it doesn't hit. And he drops it and he moves his shoe, and like a gust of wind knocks it against his shoe, and
I've
like he just
seen this.
yeah, and he just like leaves the class, and like and I was just like, why would you send this to me? Like, I don't understand. Like, I mean, I get that you might like I guess I see the point she was hoping to get, but it still was just like it didn't do it for me. No. I just thought it was just like, what?
That's
like,
definitely not a real story.
right.
Either.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. It's like
Yeah.
I already don't think the story is really true, but then on that, because it seems like a chain message is what it seems
It is.
like to me.
That story, a variant of that story has been going around, I mean, at least since email started. Probably before email started. It was probably an actual letter people would copy and send. Yeah. I hate those the professor stories.
Oh yeah.
The angry atheist professor.
Yes. So there's a lot of them that she'll send me like here and there, and I mean I know she means well, so it's like I'm not gonna like tell her just to stop.
Yeah.
Because I saw what happened, and that's the reason I said earlier as to why I try to avoid this conversation with some members of my family altogether, because I know what happened to me when I was in school. Yeah. And I know what's going to happen to me now if like I do share in that conversation. So it's like while I am outspoken and I'm not like actively running around like talking to everybody I know about my deconversion, so it's like I'm still open about it if you ask me, but other than that I just kind of leave that there because I don't want I like being able to go to my family gatherings and not be snited by everybody.
Absolutely.
Because that's probably what's going to happen. Or like maybe I'm down like talking with my peers or other cousins that I haven't seen in a while, and I'm saying, hey, like how are you doing? And like their parent walks in and is just like, hey, like you don't need to talk to him, he's an atheist, like so I don't want like that to happen because I pride myself on being a very good person. And so a lot of people would say that and see that even though I'm not in the church, and some people would just be upset about me not being in the church and would disregard everything. And that's some of them that have given me those snide comments did that. So like one of we were at Thanksgiving one year, and he had found out that I wasn't going to church anymore, and he I guess hadn't known until then, but he was asking me like where I worked and whatnot. And he was like, well, if you're not going to church, like I don't know what to tell you, but better keep your nose clean. And I was like, what? I was like, so now I'm on drugs just because I don't go to church? Like, what? So, I mean, it's the craziest thing. Like, the treatment you get just from not going or attending anymore.
Yeah.
So.
No, I've heard the same. I've heard the same thing. And it's as if, like, there are no people going to church that are on drugs.
Right.
And everyone who doesn't go to church is on drugs.
That's my thinking exactly. It's just like, wait, what?
Yeah. If anybody has any questions for Travis, just leave them in the chat. If you're just dropping in now, he's a friend and a family of mine, and he deconverted from Christianity. So if you have any questions about his deconversion story or anything, just leave them in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can.
And it's actually kind of interesting because I've heard a lot on these call-in shows that some people can't really seem to handle it. Like that was their one meaning to their life, and they couldn't figure out. They were like, well, everything's meaningless now. I don't know what to do. And they just lose and become completely depressed. And if anybody is like feeling like that, you will find like purpose again at some point. You just have to figure out what that purpose is. Yeah. And I found that when I help people, that is what I like to do.
Yeah.
So I would like to be like a doctor or something. I want to go back to school to just do something where I'm helping people, because it makes you just feel so much better.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is why a lot of people feel good at church, because at churches that are active with like helping out the community and stuff, you know, they might associate that good feeling with God, but it's coming from
helping other people.
Helping people. Yeah, a lot of people do think that. They think that if they leave Christianity, life's gonna be meaningless and stuff. That's definitely, I never had that feeling after leaving.
I never really did. It was like, when I left, at first I got sad and depressed because I was wondering why I was being treated the way I was being treated. But then when I got a new circle of friends, then I saw, hey, not everybody's like this.
Yeah.
And so then it, went from there. It wasn't just like only the people that went to the same church as me were like this, but then like I found out that there's plenty of religious people who are not like that. And so it was just, it was very helpful after that, and I became a whole lot happier after that. Yeah. And it was just fine.
I would say the same thing. Like, the only like source of grief, like anxiety, stress, depression after leaving Christianity was just from Christians like wanting nothing to do with me or treating me bad, you know.
Indeed, yeah.
Not from just not being a Christian, it's just from the way Christians were treating me.
Yes. And so I had a lot of that too. In fact, a lot of the bullying stopped too. So it was like, I mean, I had some of it from, being not in church anymore, but when I became like more outspoken about it, and in school, and I got me another set of friends, then all the bullying kind of stopped. Like, my problems stopped. Like, I wasn't anxious anymore. I didn't have depression anymore. Everything was just great all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so it was nice. It was like the only like negative feelings that was coming from that community was the people mad at me that I wasn't going to church anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. I've found the best friends since leaving Christianity. Like, because, I don't know, a lot of the friends I thought I had in the church, it was only because I was a Christian along with them, because we had the same, worldview. But as soon as I left, they didn't want anything to do with me. But then the people like you, shout out to Tyler, people like that, like, they're just great friends through, no matter what, whether we disagree or not, So.
And I agree. Like, and it's there's a whole lot of them that'll be the same way. Like, we had this conversation the other night with a group of my close friends, and we were just talking about something silly. As we were talking about a meme, is what we were talking about. There was this meme that was like, choose your fighter, the Chad or the Chet, or like, the Kyle or the Tanner. Yeah. Like, we were just going back and forth, just arguing as to like whose fighter would actually win. And like, no, Kyle would definitely beat the Chad. And like, it was just this silly conversation that was so funny, but at the same time, we were actually arguing, because we were like, no, mine wins, and like, but nobody like became not friends anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody was still fine at the end of the day, but it was just, it's a great example of that. It's like, you can have plenty of disagreements with people once you're like deconverted, and they're not like out like to harm you anymore afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I remember you saying that like you had like threats from people here and there, and I had too. There's several points. So I mean, it's the craziest thing, because like the Bible even says like, obviously not to threaten or not to like harm anybody else.
Yeah.
Like, right. But I might not say that like specifically, but it says, don't.
But
kill.
no, in the New Testament, Jesus just specifically
love everybody as your neighbor.
Violence, yeah.
Yeah. So it's very anti-violent, as far as Jesus goes anyway. The Old Testament's a completely different story. But
the Old Testament is a different story.
But
it's rape your enemies and do bad to those that are good to you, and basically.
And so like, then you have these people that will like attack you and threaten you now that you've left the church, and they're like, we better stay away from everybody I know and my family. And then they threaten you over it, and you're like, well, that's not being a good Christian. That's not like Christ-like at all. You're like, I mean, that's like the furthest away from like the littlest you could do, in my opinion, is like turn the other cheek and just like, disassociate. But like, you're going out of your way to go past that disassociation, plus I'm going to threaten you at the same time.
No, it's crazy. Christians, they're not worried about actually living a Christian, a
Right.
Christ-like lifestyle. It's all about like wearing that label, going to church, just saying you believe in it.
Right.
You know,
And I think that's enough to like cause them to be like, oh well, I'm good. Like, I don't have to worry about whatever I do now
yeah,
because I pray to God and everything's gonna be fine at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's like you've just been running around threatening people. You need to like solve that with them because that person might snap at some point. You never know. Like that person could come attack you, and well, God didn't save you. Like you shouldn't have just prayed to God about it. You should have like apologized to that person. Be like, well, look, I'm sorry I threatened you, but you know, I just want you to know to stay away from like my family because I don't want them deconverting or whatever. Like you should just be more adult about it and like talk about it instead of just threatening people. Like I mean, that's just crazy.
yeah. No, they don't want to talk about it.
No, they don't. And that's the funny thing is they like say they want to talk about it, but then they really don't because then they always hit a wall where you can't like talk to them about it anymore because then it's too much for them. It's like you've either made too much sense to them or they've gotten frustrated to the point where they can't change your mind. And then it's like, well, we can't talk about this anymore. And then they just get angry. And I just don't understand that. It's like, you wanted me to come here. You wanted me to talk. Like, and I'm telling you, this is how I feel about it. And now you're going to get mad at me and shoo me out of your house because, like, you don't agree with what I was saying. When you wanted me to come here and tell you how I felt about it because you wanted to better understand it. And so, I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. We've got a few questions in the chat, which is
All right.
right here. Let's see. I think the first question we had was from Critical Cripple.
I think one of them said something about my tattoo up there.
You want to show off your tattoo?
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty
There he
cool.
is.
Yeah. Let's see. You had Neil in the chat, Germania, Crazy Catnip, who was on last night.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. I can't hardly read without my glasses. You might have to.
Okay, here it is. It says,
Oh,
how did you feel?
How did you feel about tithing while you didn't actually believe? So I guess like when you said that you went to church for a while, like when you weren't even a Christian.
Oh, like I said, it didn't bother me. I mean,
Yeah.
it bothered me to be at the Church of Christ. I did not like going because, and it wasn't just because there was the aspect of fun. It was that like I didn't get treated differently. And I felt like I was going to be treated differently if I went back to the Church of Christ, even if I went to a different Church of Christ.
Yeah.
Like, because I left that church, there was always, like, I remember hearing so much back talk about, because that's one thing my older brother did, is that when he started having these problems and these questions, he stopped going to the one that we went to because he had disagreements with the elders there.
Mm-hmm.
And then he started going to another Church of Christ. And so he didn't hear of any of the backlash, but I was still forced to go to this church because I hadn't left yet.
Yeah.
And so I could hear all these people talking about him behind his back and gossiping and being like, "Oh, well, they go to Prospect now." And so like it was just the craziest thing, and it just made me like it made me not want to be anywhere near it.
Yeah.
And I didn't see any of that happening when I was going to these other churches with these girls. Like when I was went to the non-denominational church, or when I went to the Methodist church or the Baptist, they didn't attack each other over like what church they went to. They were just happy you were at church.
Yeah.
And so they were like happy you were participating. They were happy like that you were there. And like it was all just like, I mean, yeah, I get that like fun was a big deal about it, but there was still like you still had the hour of worship service every day, or I mean every Sunday, where it was worship service. It wasn't like you were dribbling a basketball and having fun.
Oh yeah.
So I mean you still went through the exact same thing you had at your other church, but the community was nicer.
Mm-hmm.
The community was better. People were not as judgmental.
They weren't nitpicking your life.
Yeah, they weren't. They didn't want to be. That was the big thing about it. They didn't want to nitpick your life. They didn't want to be super involved in like what you had going on, and that was something that I felt like an issue with. It was like you didn't. It was like they had to know every single thing you were doing of every minute of every day, so that they could critique you on it and be like, "No, you can't study like that. You have to study like this."
Yeah, it is crazy too with the Church of Christ. Like they will kick someone out of the church because they don't like with you, like if a guy's wearing shorts, you know, and they don't approve of that, they'll kick them out of the church. Whereas like when I went to the Baptist church, Northbrook Baptist, like there was a gay kid that went and he was a part of the youth group. They didn't kick him out, you know, they were never
right.
They didn't address him about it. They were glad he was there.
Yeah.
And that is a crazy thing. You would think if you were wanting people to become Christians, you would want everyone to be there. Whereas the Church of Christ, you know, if you're not living exactly how they want you to live, they kick you out.
Because that would not fly in the Church of Christ.
No.
Like, they would immediately kick you out. It was like they threatened me over wearing shorts. They told me, like, I either don't come or I wear pants.
Yeah.
And then later on, you know, my mom had talked to them about it, and because I guess it really, like, she didn't like that we were not allowed to go because we wanted to wear shorts, but she wasn't also at the same time going to make us wear pants, like, because she didn't see it as that big of a deal. She was like, they sit in the back. We always sit in the back. Like, what's the problem if they wear shorts?
Yeah, who's lusting over a 10-year-old boy's leg?
That was like the big kicker about it to me was that I was like, well, what? I was like, why is it a problem? They were like, because it's disgraceful and it's they were like it causes temptation. And I was like, well, who's getting tempted? Like, right? I was like, are you talking about you? Are you being tempted by me wearing shorts? Like, I'm 10 years old. Like, you're looking at my legs? Like, what? So, I mean, it was just so weird. I was like, are you saying that I'm getting all these old ladies hot that are like my family on top of that? Like, I think you're the only one I'm not related to in this church. Like, so, I mean, it was super weird. And yeah, I mean, it was just, yeah, I get like they probably didn't mean modesty in that way, but that's certainly the way it came across. I was like, what's immodest about it? And they were like, well, you should be fully clothed because you cause temptation. And I was like, well, what? And so that's where it went to there. But
the temptation is one thing, but I know there are some Church of Christ, I could name a few, but where they do require like the men to dress up like very formally, wear suits. They won't let people come if they're just dressed casually.
Right.
That's pretty bad.
No,
that's
I agree.
Really bad.
Because it's actively turning people away. And
it's a bit elitist,
on top of that,
too.
Yes, it's very elitist. And the crazy part about that to me is that at that point, it is now you asserting your own opinion or your own collective opinions. Like, because nobody in my generation thinks it's like disgraceful or like disrespectful to wear shorts. I mean, we understand like there are times where I'm not gonna wear shorts. Like I'm probably not gonna show up to like a funeral or funeral home in shorts,
right? Unless
it's like insanely hot outside. If it's like 120 degrees outside, then yeah, I might show up in shorts. But they're gonna be really, really nice shorts.
Yeah.
but I mean, it's just crazy, like, because I don't see that as disrespectful at all. I see that as like you are trying to be here for somebody else. You're trying to like be there for whoever you're trying to be there for, and you are not able to do so because you will be uncomfortable unless you wear shorts. So you're wearing shorts to like compromise. You're like, well, look, I know everybody disagrees about shorts around here, but like I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to be here, guys. Like, and so I just don't understand why it comes across as a disrespectful thing. And when I talked to a lot of people about it, they said it's just because that's how older people are. They said like how these boomers are. They're very anti like shorts. Like they have a certain mindset of how you're supposed to be. Like I always had like really long hair when I was a teenager, and they would always tell me that I should cut my hair, that it looks like a girl's hair. And so I was like, well, what's wrong with just having long hair? And they were like, well, it's disrespectful. And I was like, well, why is it disrespectful?
According to their standard.
Yeah, but it's their standard is what it is. So they are now using their own opinion to get what they want and oppress everybody else when you're supposed to be there not for their opinion. You're there for Jesus, like, right? You're not there to like adhere to all of your opinions on how I should live my life and dress myself. Like, why do you even care that much about it anyway? Like, shouldn't you be worried about your sins instead of mine? Like,
no.
So, yeah. But anyway, as far as, like, the question was, like, it was totally fine being at these non-denominations because you didn't have that atmosphere. You weren't, like, you didn't feel like you were being judged for everything you did. You felt accepted. Like, and that's what was the difference was you didn't really feel accepted at the church, at least as far as I didn't feel accepted because everybody was nitpicking me about everything. So it felt like you just you were accepted. Everybody was glad you were there. There was this happy energy all the time. Everybody was just, it was just great.
Yeah.
Even like when you were in the worship service, like it was fine. Like I didn't mind being in the worship service. Like it was, it was nice.
Yeah. Let's see.
Except for that mega church, that was strange.
Yeah.
Where they spoke in tongues, that was weird.
That is very weird.
That was weird to me. I didn't really like that. I thought that kind of weirded me out a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Manuel Strickland.
Oh.
Hey. He said,
Good to see ya.
question for you, Travis. Do you think your current position on Christianity would have remained the same if you had not been raised in the Church of Christ?
Maybe not. It definitely would have been different had I not been raised in the Church of Christ. That was a very large, overwhelming factor to it.
I absolutely agree. I think that if I had been raised in like the Baptist church, like Northbrook Baptist, I would most likely still be a Christian today, because I wouldn't have seen a bunch of hypocrites, a bunch of horrible stuff. Like, it just would have been casual Christians being good people, you know.
Yes. And it was multiple. Like I said, there was two non-denominationals I went to. One was the one I told you about, where I went to the Christian rock concert with, and I was happy with being there. And there was another one that I dated for 3.5 months, and not once did we ever have a problem about Jesus or church or what our beliefs were. And I was 17 at this time. And we went to another non-denominational church, and I was a part of their basketball league and a part of their youth group as well. And I was happy to be there, and I was happy to go there with her. And I mean, we had stayed together, because that was primarily the reason I was going. But if we had stayed together, because eventually she had broke up with me for other reasons. But if we had stayed together, then or at least even a decent amount of time longer, maybe even like a year or two longer, I might have still been attending that church, because it's not far up the road from where I live. So, I mean, I don't see any reason why I would have just stopped going.
Yeah.
Other than because we broke up and I didn't want to see her anymore.
Yeah.
But that was primarily why I didn't go anymore, because I was actually sad about that, because we were doing basketball through the summer, and I enjoyed that and being a part of that. And so I knew that when we broke up, I was like, well, I don't really want to keep going to the same church as her anymore. I already didn't want to go to church anyway. I just liked going to that one. So, I mean, And it's now that we weren't together anymore, I wasn't going to go anymore, because I didn't want to be there and be like her ex and all that.
Well, yeah, obviously. But, I think... I think like I was saying too, if I had been raised in kind of a casual Christianity, I probably never would have questioned it. And I think I started going to the Baptist church too late. I'd already been taught to look at Christianity in depth as the Church of Christ teaches you to do.
Right. So just so strictly.
Yeah, and so I was used to that. So even going to the Baptist church, I thought they were awesome. I thought they were great people, the best Christians I had met. But I was still so critical of it because of how the Church of Christ had taught me that I could see where they weren't exactly following the Bible,
Right.
And so it was a bit too late,
I agree. It was definitely just way too late. If I had been raised in it, it could have completely been different.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. I mean, at the least, I wouldn't be. I don't know. I mean, I just think it would be different. I think it would have been a lot different. Yeah. But it was good to hear from you, Manuel. I heard you were doing pretty good. I'm glad to hear from you. I know I can't see you, but it's nice to hear from you.
Let's see, we're probably way behind on questions.
Probably.
Let's see. I saw one. Oh, shirtless. Some.
Bursagaliri
said Karen overpowers Kyle. How do you feel about that?
I don't know, because Kyle's never the manager, so he's flat wrong in my opinion. Just no, Karen does not win over Kyle.
Okay.
Because Kyle's gonna punch her in the face and go to jail probably. Then Chet has the last laugh with his lawyers.
Yeah. Let's see. There's a lot of chat going on, but not a lot of questions. Okay. So also shirtless. Bursa. I don't know. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. In your personal opinion,
Bursagalery.
why do you think families get upset and feel socially forced to make their children attend church?
So I have a really good one for this. So this is just one example of shirtless, but when I was graduating high school, I got chosen out of one of the three, there was only three people in 600 that got chosen I'm sorry, no, it's not even more than that, because it's three people in all of Coleman County got chosen as student of the year. Like, that's how good I did and whatnot. So had good grades.
Yeah.
But I think I had like the highest English average. I got recognized like 3 years in a row for that, for the highest average of cross like my peers in my school for having the highest English, and had the highest math twice, I think. And I tutored a lot of people in my class one year because our teacher had a child, and the child was having very rough health issues, and so he had to be up at the hospital for like 3 months out of one semester. So he couldn't be there to attend his class, and the substitute teachers could only like do so much. They weren't math teachers. They were just there to give us whatever the teacher told us to do. And so a lot of the students in our classes started having problems, and their grades started dropping because we didn't have a teacher. And so I started tutoring, and in reward for that, he didn't ask me to, but I just started tutoring to try to help people because I could see where they were struggling, and people were like, I'm going to get kicked off the sports team. Like, people were, freaking out.
Yeah.
And so I started tutoring to help them, and a lot of times it ended up with just people copying my homework. But I would try to like make sure they understood what we were doing for when test time came, because you couldn't cheat on the test. So
yeah,
or at least it's a lot harder to anyway. So I would give people my notes, and I would teach them about it a little bit, and I would make them work out a problem or two and make sure they got the gist of it. And then I would also later on, and I think it was after about a month of that, he liberated me from the class because I already had a 97 in there. And this was going to be my second year of having the highest math average. And he liberated me from it, and I didn't have to take that class anymore, but I became the teacher's aide for math. So I took one period out of my day to tutor people, basically be the teacher, and also like grade papers for him, because that way, he was up at the hospital and stuff.
Yeah.
And
that's insane.
Yeah, so I mean, it was the point is there was 3 students that were selected to be student of the year out of all the countywide schools. All of them. There's 12 or 13 of them. It's like Fairview, Vinemont, Good Hope, West Point, like Cold Springs, Hansville. I mean, so there's a lot of them. And that's because our school was 4A, Fairview's 4A, Good Hope's 3A, and just between the 3, that's already over 2,000 kids. So, and you're looking at all of high school too. So, so it's a lot. And because it's not just seniors that were selected. And we were all commissioned to write a paper on what our general study was, like what we were trying to go into, and how we wanted to change the world, and why we deserve to be student of the year and get the student of the year scholarship. And we all did our papers, and when they were giving the award ceremony, we went and had it at Allstake. So we came and got all dressed up and did this big formal thing, and I was there with Mom, and we were just, it was just really crazy things that felt like you were in something out of a movie where everybody's all dressed up and they hit the wine glass, and
yeah.
So it was really cool. But because you had all these powerful people there that were over positions in Coleman, the guy from Chamber of Commerce was there, I don't think we have a mayor, but there was these people like that were there.
Yeah, and very powerful, influential people.
The school board of education was there, the superintendent was there. And so then they announced who they were going to have as the winner. And they said, we chose this student not primarily because we thought his paper, what he was trying to do for the world was better, than everybody else's, but we also chose this person because he was the only one that included Jesus in his life. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And so I lost. And this is the real kicker of it is I lost because he put Jesus in his paper and said he owed everything to Jesus in his whole life and he wanted to like do all this for Jesus. So I lost a scholarship because I didn't include Jesus in my paper, for one. For two, if like, nail on the head, like if just the kicker of it makes it so much worse, he wanted to do nuclear fusion in cars, in the engine, so that they ran on nuclear fusion. And like in your first thought, you're like, well, that'd be cool, I guess, because they have like infinite energy. But then you think, well, what happens when they collide with another car?
You have a bunch of nukes running around on the road.
Yeah, so like that's what he wanted to do, and they thought he should be student of the year and give him the scholarship so he can make that happen. Like, that's like, what? Like, why? Like, that's idiotic. That's crazy. You're gonna kill everyone. but he put Jesus in his paper.
Oh man.
So, but yeah. So
that,
I mean,
that is some bias
yes.
if I've ever heard of it. That's
right.
some
Completely.
Christian privilege.
Right. And so to answer your question, like that is exactly why, depending on where you live, people are like almost felt like they're forced to make their children go through church and to like be an active part of their community, because if not, and they don't put Jesus in their paper, they're not going to get a scholarship and go to college. If, depending on your area you live in.
There are a lot of benefits to being...
I mean, there are benefits to being in the church and being active, because I certainly felt the backlash of one of them.
Yeah. And I think, like, if you want any sort of position of authority in your city, in, your school, in sports, like, you've got to be a Christian.
Right. You do. Yeah, especially here anyway.
Yeah, well, definitely here in Alabama.
Right.
Probably not anywhere where people have an
else.
where people have an IQ above their age.
Yes. But no, yeah, it's tremendous. Like, there's certain areas where if the whole area is deeply involved in church, like, you pretty much need to be as well. You don't have to be, but if you're not, there are going to be things that your children, opportunities, they miss out on because they were not in church.
Yeah. I bet there are a lot of people, and I can't read people's minds, but I bet there are a lot of people who are active in their church, not because they really believe it, but just because they want those privileges for themselves, for their kids.
I agree.
Whatever.
I'm sure they're out there because, I mean, just the other day, like, my grandmother got sharked by a business guy over the phone. She got, like, sharked into signing up for this thing that was, I don't remember what it was particularly, but it was, like, some kind of thing that would, like, cause her to pay, like, monthly payments of, like, $60.
I think that's what Tyler was telling me about.
For, like, nothing.
Yeah.
And it was, like, there was, like, nothing that was coming out of it. It was, like, she was getting a membership that she was never going to use.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I was like, there's not even one of those stores here. I was like, why would you pay $60 a month? That's ridiculous for the amount that, like, for a membership anyway. And unless you're talking about, like, a gym, I guess. But even then, I mean, work out at home. But, like, she got sharked, and what she said was, oh, I know he wasn't a shark. I know he wasn't a bad person because we talked for an hour about how religious he was and what church he went to. And I'm like, so he just used religion to, like, get a little old lady who only has Social Security coming in to pay this outrageous, like, membership price that she's never ever going to use, that she's not even going to remember that she even has. Like, just, like, so there are people out there that definitely just do it to take advantage of it, for sure.
Yeah.
And they might not even be people, like, we will never know whether he actually even does go to church or not. I mean, he could have just said that because she was saying something about, whatever, because she's always doing Bible stuff all day long, every day. She's, like, writing down stuff or listening to scriptures and stuff. So, I mean, that probably is what cued him in on it. She probably had to go turn off the radio from listening to a sermon. So...
Yeah. Wow. Let's see. Somebody asked. Tatted Jedi said best Ninja Turtle.
Well, that one's kind of tough because the way I view best is like, I guess, most powerful.
Okay.
I mean, I don't like my favorite Ninja Turtle is Michelangelo, just because he's the funniest. Like cracks me up and makes me laugh, so he's my favorite one. But I view the best one as either being most powerful or the one that is just like all around the best in your sense of being the best. And so, like, I mean, Leonardo definitely stands out as being like one of the strongest will-powered ones because he's always so determined, like, to make sure to lead the turtles because he's the leader. And so, but then you have Donatello who can do something that none of them can because they can all like fight and they can all like be and step up and like be leaders if they need to. They're not gonna just flounder in the chance of being a leader. We see that in like movies and TV shows and whatnot. Yeah. There are times where Leonardo's not there and one of them has to like make a plan to get him out of it. But Donatello can do all this stuff with technology that none of them can do. So I don't know. It's pretty close. I'd say it's probably depends on like what your version of best is. Like strongest is probably Leonardo, not just for like actual strength, but strength of character. And I don't know. I mean, it's close with Donatello because, like I said, he can just do stuff with technology that none of them can do. So if it came up in an actual fight, they're up against like Ninja Batman. So Ninja Turtle Batman. So I mean, you've got an issue there. Because like, there were so many things I remember him doing, like in the movies and in the shows, that were like, just like he is definitely like the tech guys. Like if they can't like fight their way through something, Donatello came up with a way to get them through it.
Okay.
So, I mean, he might be the best, but my favorite's definitely Mikey.
Okay.
I mean,
we've got your answer now.
Right.
I've never watched the Ninja Turtles, but I believe you.
I like the memes. The Ninja Turtle memes. I get that you probably don't understand them, but there are some good memes from the Ninja Turtles.
Well, that's always important, like for any sort of entertainment franchise.
Nowadays, it really is. Like, if you don't have good memes going on, then like nobody's really watching you.
Yeah.
is what that says to me.
Yeah.
It's like nobody's actually watching you. You're not really well liked.
And that's what keeps like a lot of film series is relevant. Like decades later, like you look at like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, the Star Wars prequels, Lord of the Rings, like they live on through the memes.
Yes.
You know?
Because that actually happened when I got Disney Plus. I was watching through a lot of like some of the things I'd missed out on that I never saw. Because like one of the things that I never saw was the Moana movie. I had never seen it.
I've still never watched it.
And okay, well, I was dating somebody and we chose to do. She was like, "Well, I'm not." She's like, "I've already seen everything on Netflix. Let's do Disney Plus." And I was like, "Okay." So I turned on Disney Plus, and she was like, "Have you ever seen Moana? That was such a good movie." And I was like, "No, I haven't." So we watched it. It was a really good movie. I was happy about it, and so I like decided to watch all these like Disney movies that I'd never seen before, like WALL-E and a few others. Yeah. And so then around this time, I had just finished up with those. I was needing something new to like watch to like, I guess, spend my time on. And I was looking for something to watch, and I just didn't know what I wanted to watch. And I was looking through memes, and I saw all these like prequel Star Wars memes, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go back and rewatch them.
Yeah.
And so I mean that causes you to go back and rewatch it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that with the Harry Potter series with me too a while back, as it had been. It'd been like maybe 5 years or so since I'd actually like watched all of them all the way through. I might have caught like bits and pieces of one when it was on TV or something.
Does Harry Potter have a strong meme game?
It does.
It does. Because I don't see too many.
Well, it's not as prevalent as it used to be.
Yeah.
But every now and then you'll see one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, just every now and then, like say...
You're a wizard, Harry.
Yeah. That's one that's just never going to die. It's going to happen occasionally. Because what it comes down to is if you're out memeing, and you're a Harry Potter fan, then you're going to throw a Harry Potter meme in there because that's what your brain is going to go to.
Oh, yeah.
When
absolutely.
you see something that rhymes with wizard, you're going to be like, well, you're a blizzard, Harry. Like, so, I mean, there's plenty of them that are really good.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's, so like I said, that you don't see them as much anymore because they're in between movies. It's like as soon as this next one comes out, the third of the Fantastic Beasts, you're going to see them everywhere. They're going to be all over the place.
Yeah. So, we've got a friend in the chat.
Oh. What's up, Tanner?
We need to get Tanner on here.
Yes, when we could do that with Discord, we could do that.
Yeah, yeah.
We'd probably have to do. He is in Europe, so we'd probably need to do it about 3 p.m. I guess that'd be about like, would be like 10 p.m. over there. So we'd probably have to shoot for like earlier than that, maybe like 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. 'Cause he's like 7 hours ahead.
Yeah, we could do that. We could get him on.
Mm-hmm.
We could both be here, or you could be. Let's say we need. Oh, we need to get Tyler. We
Right.
could have 4 people.
I mean, just have him right here.
Yeah, we'll just Tyler be like down here.
Well, he is kind of short, but I mean, he's.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Tyler.
He's probably not watching. He's probably like playing Apex or something.
He'll see it later, and he'll know.
Yeah.
Later,
Yeah.
and he'll be like, "What? You called me short?"
We weren't talking about your height.
Yes, your stature. So let's see. All right. Is there any more?
A lot of comments.
Yeah, Tanner's saying just hologram technology. He said he is confirmed on the Europe.
Yeah, he's designing that, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So we'll just get a hologram of him and just put it there through Discord.
Have you noticed in Star Wars?
No, he doesn't, Tanner.
Have you noticed in Star Wars when you have 2 people communicating over a hologram, you'll have somebody holding it, but on the other end, they're not holding it. They're just standing there looking at everybody.
Wait, one more time? What?
Okay, so like, say like you have, trying to think of a scene, but you have somebody holding the hologram in their hand, so they should be like looking down at it.
Oh, yes.
But
yes.
then on the other end, they're just standing there and
standing
they're
there.
looking at everybody.
Right, yes.
That's always bothered me.
I always wondered about that too. Like, because they're holding this little, like, and I mean, I get it, like, it'd be this, I guess it's the same as to whether it's like on the ship or whether it's in their hand.
Yeah.
But
either way, they should be like looking down at one point.
no,
because
yes,
it's
when
small.
it shows the
but
opposite.
then on the other end,
yes.
they're looking around at everybody.
Yeah, it should show them like up close, like holding it, like it always
Yeah.
does with Darth Sidious when he does one,
Well,
because
yeah.
he's always like
Yeah.
right here.
Or even if it still shows their whole body, they should be looking whether it's in their hand or where the console would be.
Right.
They're not looking at. I don't
No,
know.
yeah,
That
I
just-
agree. No, yeah, it is definitely a plot hole that they never fixed. That they should have realized a long time ago. That it was like, you should have part of my arm coming to the hologram and then cutting off somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like, where's the camera on it anyway? Like,
No.
is it like multi-camera? Is it like a 3D camera?
I don't know how that works.
I'm not familiar.
Star Wars doesn't care about any of that
Right, no, they
stuff
really don't.
though, which is fine. But, that's why Star Trek never used holograms.
Kudos to Star Trek. I never actually seen any of Star Trek.
I've never watched Star Trek either.
See, my dad was always into Star Trek, and he liked it. And when I see it, like when I would walk in and see it, I was always into Star Wars because that was, I guess, the first one that made a big impression on me. And when I walked in and I'd sit there and watch it, I'd be like, "This is just a Star Wars knockoff, Dad." And he'd be like, "No, it's not." And like we'd like go back and forth for a minute. I always just used to tease him about it, but never been a Trekkie. I never.
No, me neither.
I mean, I watched one of the movies, one of the recent
The
movies.
J.J. Abrams movies.
Yeah, and one of them.
I've seen a couple of those.
Yeah, I just saw one. I remember like when it first like redid it series when it first came back out after like so many years.
Yeah.
And I mean, I liked it. It wasn't like bad, but I was like, this is not Star Wars.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Doctor Who?
No,
No.
I never did either.
Doctor Who's good.
I heard it was. I just never actually got into it in the time of its power for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe I was.
It's dead now.
Right.
Very.
That's
much so.
unfortunate.
I mean, it's still going, but.
Oh,
know.
it is, but it's just dead. Oh, so it's like Supernatural then.
Yeah, yeah. Supernatural should have ended at season 3. It's the same plot, like just put in a blender and then thrown out on a plate.
Okay, so like, hang on, we gotta cover this. So, so like, I kind of agree with you, but like when they came out with the series, that was their whole envisionment. It was plug and place, was the same thing over and over. It was their never ending horror movie is what it was. It was like every week they could have a different horror movie character show up and they could fight them, overcome them, and go on. But then when they got into production, one of the people said, "Hey, we have to have some kind of like background storyline that they're trying to achieve, or this is gonna like bore everybody. It's like, who cares like what you fought every week if nobody has a storyline to keep them interested?" Mm-hmm. And so they started off with like searching for their dad.
Yeah.
And so like that's where a lot of people say, like you said, like season 3, they found their dad, everything's fine, cut it off here. And so
That was the original plan.
right. And then they decided it was too popular and they had to keep it going and come up with a different background storyline. And then they did, and I jumped on the bandwagon. I mean, I had already been like watching it at that point, but I wasn't like really into it until that part happens. And I was like, ooh, okay. I was like, all right, I like where this is going. And so I feel like it should have ended at season 6, but they had like problems with like the writer strike, and they had people leaving and other people directing it now that weren't the original writers. And so they wanted to go a new direction with it because it was gaining in popularity at that point. Because that was when it like hit Netflix.
Yeah.
Was like beginning of season 6, and it started like skyrocketing.
Well, that's when I started watching,
right.
actually. But.
And so it like everybody started like really getting on the bandwagon with it, and they decided to try to milk it. And they were like, well, we can like nip the storyline in the bud and finish it later, and just like keep running with it until it dies in popularity again. And I felt like it really just should have ended there. It should not have like kept going.
And was that when they started? I can't remember the seasons from one another, but is that when they started doing the fairy tale stuff? Like they started introducing like Wizard of Oz and
yeah, that's what they started just delving into anything they could after season
and
6.
The Hansel and Gretel and all like
because the storyline that they had set up was basically revelation from the Bible.
Yeah,
like devil comes back, Michael comes down, they have epic climactic battle, and then like the end of the world, Armageddon. And so they came up with this like little loophole to like get out of that, so they could keep milking it. They're like, well, what else can we do? That's like the biggest bad that we could even do is to do Revelations. Yeah. So like we can't go worse, or I mean better or bigger than the apocalypse. So then they started doing like fairy tale stuff, different things they had never done before, or that they wanted to explore differently again. Yeah. Like jinns. I thought that was a kind of a cool episode. Personally, like I wondered what they would do with it, with like a jinn, like a genie.
Okay.
And so, but it's a jinn though, it's different than a genie. There's no like magic lamp. It's just a dust devil. But so they did like all these other things, and then they fought the Greek gods, and I thought that was cool. Not like all of them, but they just fought Zeus.
I don't know if I've seen that.
It's in season 8, and it was really, really cool. Okay. And they fought the Leviathans, which was kind of okay. It was really just good for the comedy, is what it was good for. Because like the main Leviathan took over this guy because he was like a vessel, and he like took over this guy that's a head of a company called his name was like Dick Roman. So
I do remember this.
Yeah, that's in season 7. So they were just making dick jokes all the time, and it was just really like humorous. It was just really silly. So I mean that was okay. So they had some like okay moments, but I still think it should have ended at season 7. Yeah. I mean season 6. Sorry.
Yeah. I've watched a few episodes since then, specifically the Scooby-Doo episode. Yeah. That was pretty great.
I was happy with that.
I really liked that.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's like they've done some good things since they should have ended. I still feel like they should have ended. But I liked the Scooby-Doo. I hated the idea of it because Clefargle was actually the one who showed a screenshot to me about it. And I was like, no. And I was like, no. But so then I went and watched it and was super happy with it. I liked it. It was a fun episode. Yeah. But then they did some other things, like they fought Zeus. They did like Prometheus, like his storyline. They did like a whole lot of cool things in between. And so I was interested for that. But I've always been like, the whole time I've been like, come back to Revelation.
Yeah. So well, that was my favorite part, was the biblical stuff.
Yeah, the biblical stuff. Yeah. That's what I wanted to see. That's why I was there. And so I felt like I was just kind of getting dragged for like 7 seasons. But I mean, it was still good though. I was still like happy that they continued to have work, I guess, you know, because when you think about it from that point of view, they might not ever got like hired for another job again.
Well, yeah.
Like, so yeah, I was glad that they, you know, still had work.
Let's see.
Catnip says there's not any more questions that she has seen.
Yeah, I don't think. We've got 11 people watching. If anybody has any questions about anything, whether it's Travis's deconversion or Supernatural or, you know, Ninja Turtles, just leave it in the chat and we'll answer it.
Also, I was just kidding, Tyler, on all the jokes, by the way. Just playful fun.
I wasn't.
All right.
Let's see. So Neil, do you know who Neil the 604 atheist is? Okay, he does live streams, specifically people's deconversion stories.
Okay.
And he's streaming right now, so I think he's taking away some of our viewers.
Oh, all right, right. Well, it's good to have more viewers either way.
Bug him.
We go and check and see if there's any questions over there.
Let's see, here he is. See, he's going.
Yeah.
I've got Neil pulled up right now. Crazy Catnip is on Neil's stream. She left us. And Critical Cripple. They were both watching ours. Now they're watching Neil.
Right. Well, I guess they felt like it has seen everything they wanted to see.
I'm going to tell them to come back.
I thought there was a couple other questions, actually, that I had seen.
Yeah, we can look.
I mean, they're not here to, because I think one of them was by them. But...
I'm telling Neil to stop stealing our viewers.
That's silly.
No. Anyway. So, we can jump in Neil's after party, actually, after he's done with his stream, if you would want to do that.
Sure. Let's scroll up and see. I want to see what those other questions are, even if they're not still there anymore. Because I did see a few that we just missed here and there. I thought, anyway.
There were a lot of good conversations going on.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Best Ninja Turtle.
Oh, okay. So Catnip was showing these just in case we missed them. Okay, I see. So there's probably not any we missed then.
Mark Caesar said, "I'll bet the people in Jesus' time didn't have short hair. You were just following standards of the Bible." And he said, "Got to keep those naked boy legs out of the side of the preachers. Don't tempt them too much."
They already have problems enough as it is.
Yeah.
Can't add to the fire.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think the way people's questions are answered by Christian groups, pastors, priests actually aid with the deconversion?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah. As far as mine went, a lot of the times I would just get discouraged from asking the questions.
Yeah.
So they would be like, when I had these questions or approached it, if they didn't have an answer, they would tell me either to just pray and maybe God will reveal it to you or bring you to the answer, or they would just say, well, that's not what the Bible said, or and just try to push that down.
That's what really bothered me too.
And that just makes you all the more curious about it.
For one, when you ask, when you're struggling with your faith and you're asking, for evidence, and they say, well, just have faith, or
that's a cop out,
or just don't question it, just don't ask questions.
Yes, I got that one a lot too.
Yeah, you just keep believing,
They're like,
don't stop believing.
Just don't worry about that part. And you're like, wait, what? This is a serious issue here. And they're like, no, just don't worry about it. It's cool. Just forget about that.
Yeah, yeah. And then like you were saying too, if they'll say, oh, well, you're just reading that wrong or taking it out of context. I know that bothered me when I was asking about the slavery in the Old Testament, kidnapping young girls from most likely underage girls from these pagan tribes, kidnapping them, forcing them into marriage and raping them.
Yes, because it was very specific about the Hebrew word used. I watched somebody who was an expert on this, and he said that the Hebrew word used was, I don't remember the word exactly, but it was used as the meaning of a preteen age. It was you were 11 or 12. You were bigger than a boy, but you weren't a teenager yet. You weren't adolescent yet.
Yeah.
And so they were definitely preteens that they would capture because they knew they were still virgins.
Well, right, that's the thing. There was no way they knew, obviously, if someone was actually
true.
a virgin or not.
Yeah.
So they just it was just the young girls.
Yes, so they just picked them specifically because they were young enough that they mightn't be still virgins.
Yeah.
And it was completely barbaric and awful.
That is the most disturbing and most disgusting thing in the Bible, I think.
It really is.
What bothered me most was when I would ask preachers or other Christians about it, and they were like, that's just how it was, or you're taking that out of
Yes.
context, or even one Christian, this was Micah.
Oh, okay, right.
He said, rape's not as bad as people make it out to be. This is a Christian who still condemns me for not being a Christian.
And see, I got into a Facebook war on your page the other day because I was like, this is exactly the problem with the whole entire world, that they use their belief and their theology to justify things that they know are just not okay. Or they have become convinced by their theology that these things that are not okay are okay. And it's like, just no, dude. Like, no. And I mean, it's sickening is what it is. And it's like, because I know you probably went through and read them. We were talking about like he had, was trying to uphold like, oh, well, slavery isn't needed anymore, but it's still okay because God said it was okay. And I'm like, dude, you've sacrificed your humanity and showed everybody that you're a garbage human being. Yeah. And Tanner jumped on there after I went to bed and was like, he wasn't saying you were a garbage human being. He was just saying you had garbage morals. And I was like, no, I was saying both. Like, you are a garbage human being and you have garbage morals because you think that it is okay to enslave other human people. And I see what like he was trying to do, but it's like the problem is they have this theology that makes them either like I said, think that things that are not okay are okay, and then be like, no, that's totally fine, when everybody else is like, no, that is not fine at all. But then, also, like, there are people that know it's not okay, but can't handle that the Bible says it. So then they start doing these backflips to try to justify it and say, oh, well, that's just how the times were back then, or that's the Old Testament, that's the old law. I mean, you've heard plenty of them, like, plenty of different things, and my whole thing on it is, why was it in the old law to begin with?
Yeah. If
he is all powerful and all knowing, why did he allow it to happen when he knew better in the first place?
Yeah.
Like,
and
so
if he's the same,
why was it actually needed?
Yeah. And
like, do we actually need the pyramids to be built? Like, I mean, they're cool, but do we actually like need them? Did society, like, would it have fallen apart if the pyramids were never built? No, yeah, they're cool, but like you didn't have to enslave people to build them. I mean, surely
were people enslaved to build the pyramids?
I mean, that is up for debate too.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that, but
they say that there was. They said that the Egypt like enslaved people from people around them that they had conquered and forced them to build, kind of like how the movie portrays the movie what was it the movie with about Moses, the DreamWorks movie,
one?
the cartoon one.
Oh yeah,
was it called the Prince of Egypt?
I think it was Prince of Egypt.
And it's like shows all these Hebrew slaves like building the pyramids. We know that Moses and his slaves didn't actually build the pyramids.
No,
but like that was supposedly according to a lot of. I mean, they're kind of divided on it. Some people say they didn't, and some people said they did.
From what I've heard, was the Egyptians didn't have slaves as in other cultures had. It was more of a draft, like you were drafted to work, and they still took care of you and your family.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why it's divided. Like some people think that they were actually enslaved, and some people think that they were just like drafted and was like, okay, you're going to work on the pyramids, and that is your job now.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I like that idea much better.
Yeah,
than
and I don't know,
people, but I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't actually.
Egyptians
know.
seem to be pretty progressive though for their time. I mean, they had queens.
Yeah, they did, and that was like unheard of. In which the whole European culture hated that, and they found a way to backlash as soon as they could. And whenever they did finally get a chance to overthrow the queen, then they tried to erase everything she ever did from existence. But they also didn't like immediately rise up right off the bat. They were like, okay, well, we have a queen now. Surely we'll get a king shortly. And then they never got one. So then they eventually was like, rah! But, it didn't. It took a while. And they didn't actually do that until she was dethroned on her own. Like, I don't remember exactly how, but there was two of them. So there was King Tut's mother, of course.
Yeah.
And there was one other one. Both of them also wore the beard. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was obvious that it was not something that was like, it wasn't like okay, but it was still like okay. So they were more progressive than everybody else was.
Yeah, and they had like
So
equal powerful like gods too, like
Yeah.
goddesses. I mean, you had Isis, you know.
And if I'm not mistaken, women could own property a lot easier than other
Yeah, I've
countries
read
too.
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I believe that there is a very good chance that they might be right, that they weren't actually enslaved, but they were just like, this is your job in society. They were more like socialistic, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. There's the Daily Atheist. Let's see. I think we had a few questions. Don't stop believing. Okay. This was Tanner. Is the logical conclusion of Pascal's wager that one should believe in the most terrifying deity to avoid the worst possible hell?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know, because, like, for me, if it turned out that the God of the Bible, the Judeo-Christian God, was true, and I, died and I stood before him, and he was like, well, you're going to go to hell because you were an atheist and you didn't believe, I'd be like, well, then why? I have a few questions first, like, if you're willing to answer them, like, why were you such a dick in the Bible? Like, why would you do this? Why did you, why would you say slavery is okay? Like, things like that. I was like, that caused me to believe that other people were pretending to speak for you instead of it actually being you. Because there's no way a just and true and loving father would want his kids to enslave each other.
Yeah, absolutely
in my opinion.
not.
So it's like, that's obviously not the word of God. And so to me, I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I can see how some people would do that if they feel like they just have to have a religion. They're like, well, I'm just going to go with this one because this one is like the worst possible hell I can imagine. So I'm going to do that one so I can avoid that just in case that's the one out of
Just
10,000.
stupid logic.
Yes, but I mean,
Yeah.
You're still picking one out of like 10,000. Who's to say that you don't receive all 10,000 hells?
Yeah.
Like, so no, I think that's I don't think that's actually good either, because you might get into that religion and you might be there for like 10 years before you start seeing the fallacies of it and problems in it and say, oh, I'm in the wrong religion. This is definitely not true. And before you get a chance to like get into the religion you think's the right one, then you die. And then, like, you figure out which one it was, or whatever, and go to that hell instead. And you're like, well, wasted 10 years. Crap. You saw I was trying, though, right? Like, I mean, so, no, I don't think that logically follows.
Pascal's wager is the worst argument, I
Yes.
think. And it's not even like you're not actually believing in something. You're just trying to place a bet,
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
It's like, well, I'm just going to play it safe, Well, you're supposed to believe, like, Christianity requires you to believe in it. Not just play it safe.
And I've heard so many people talk about it and say, oh, well, they'd be like, but to risk your soul, like, in searching for another religion, like, and being out of one for however long you're out of one to search for the right one, or which one you feel like's the right one. And they just had this huge problem with, like, risking your soul, or, like, not going to church and risking your soul, and I'm like, well, if you're doing things on Pascal's wager, you're gambling either way, aren't you? So, I mean, you're gambling your soul, so why is it a problem if I do it?
Yeah.
And without doing Pascal's wager.
Yeah. But what if there's a God who doesn't have a religion, and he just expects people to be good people, and he's going to throw people in hell for believing in false gods?
Exactly.
Right? So there's a case to be made using
Right.
Pascal's wager for not even being religious.
Yes, true.
Just terrible logic. But I've also thrown that out there when people use Pascal's wager. I'm like, I'm just playing it safe.
But I mean, you're right though. Like, it's no, you can't. Like, I don't know. It's better to me to like sit on the outside until I'm convinced of one.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I don't think any of them are convincing. So
No.
I don't see how somebody could convince me of one.
And I find it absolutely convincing that Christianity is not
It's definitely not true. That's the big issue. Is it's not just that I'm not convinced or that nobody can convince me. It is also that I've seen like I had a conversation with somebody about it, and they about like the slavery in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
They were like, well, that's not really what it was saying. It wasn't really saying this. And they started trying to give me all these contextual things. And I'm like, but that's not actually what it says. I was
No.
like, you're avoiding what it says because you can't handle what
Yeah.
it says. So, like, if you can read the lines and read between the lines and you're still not okay with it, then, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I've seen enough of the lines to be like,
Yeah. I think that's convincing enough itself, the fact that like Yahweh is supposed to be all good, right? And then you have slavery, and you have pedophilia, rape, human trafficking in the Old Testament, and this Yahweh is supposed to be the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Yep.
He wasn't good. There is no way, like, that was an evil God.
Right.
And that God can't be all good. That's
No.
reason enough
Yes,
to
it
not
is.
believe in Christianity. And that's like one of a million reasons.
Right, and that was like one of the things that I had. One of the problems I did have that I didn't mention earlier was I felt exactly that way. I was like, well, if he's all powerful, he cannot be all good because he's not going to pick sides anyway, especially to the side that doesn't even believe in him, the side that believes in him but doesn't think what is his word is actually his word, because they didn't believe that Jesus was a true Messiah.
Yeah.
So why are they his chosen people if they're rejecting him? But they're like, no, well, they're not outright rejecting him, but they're not even calling him by his actual name as far as the Bible's concerned of what his name is. They're giving him a different name and basically making him into a different deity. So like, why are they your chosen people out of all people anyway? Like, why didn't you come down to the Gentiles and have them as your chosen people? Like, why was it the Jews?
No.
Like, especially when it was people that, like, rejected you and rejected your son. Like, so, I mean, that just didn't make any sense to me at all.
No.
Because, I mean, if he's not, he definitely can't be all good if he is all powerful. You can't play favorites and be all good. You can't destroy cities and be all good, because at some point there's going to be a baby or a child that hasn't heard the word yet who is still an innocent child at that point, as far as what the Bible says.
No.
So if you have a tsunami that wipes out a whole city, you've killed innocents. So that is not good.
Right.
Like,
and like this Yahweh character was directly telling them to murder the men, women, and children,
Yes.
except for the young girls.
yeah, except for the young girls, not
But,
the
like,
baby.
they were
the babies you
slaughtering-
can kill. You can just
Yeah.
slaughter the babies.
And pregnant women too, right?
Mhm, and- yep.
Christians want to make pro-life some Christian value.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
never
Never,
a
there
Christian
was
value. It
never
wasn't
a
a
Christian
Jewish.
value. Ever.
It
Never.
wasn't a Jewish value. Like you had Israelites slaughtering pregnant women.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to call it an unborn baby, Yahweh was commanding
Yep.
unborn babies to be killed, and that's not even. That's even leaving out the fact that abortion was literally condoned.
Yeah, it was condoned in the Bible. It was there.
If you suspected that your wife was pregnant with someone else, or the priest would give the pregnant woman this poison,
Yes.
and if it killed the baby, then she must have cheated on you, and if it didn't, it was like yeah, it was yours.
Yep.
You know.
And so, I mean, that's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
and so, by the way, if anybody is watching that's like, I've never heard that. Where is that? That's in Numbers 5. The book of Numbers, chapter 5. God's okay with abortion. He doesn't say only if it's you suspect your wife cheating on you. He just says if you suspect your wife's cheating on you when she becomes pregnant, then you can then go and to the priest and feed her a poison, and if the baby lives, it's yours, and if it dies, she was cheating on you.
Yeah.
And that's direct abortion is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like you're getting rid of the fetus, so it may not be the actual same procedure, but it's, in my view, it's abortion. You're getting rid of the fetus before it's born.
Yep. Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, go down. I got one right here. So, Kofargal had posted and said, why did Saul get a personal post-mortem appearance from Jesus to convert him, yet the rest of us don't? And I would love to comment on this, because there was one day that I was driving home, and the way the Bible describes it looks like something that I saw when I was driving home one day. And yes, so I was driving home, and I saw this green light, like, flying through the sky, like right over the treetops, and it was like kind of like flashing like that, and then it just exploded and had this big flash of green over the trees, and I was like, what am I seeing? It almost made me have a wreck on my way home. This was last year in 2000, or I'm sorry, 2 years ago in 2018 is when it was, in November, and I was so like, I was like, did I see aliens? I was like, what? I was like, what did I see? And so then I did some research online, and it turns out meteorites, as they come in, sometimes they have materials in them that will cause them to glow different colors as they're burning, because some of them have combustible elements in them. And so when I look at this tale of Saul in the Bible, that's what it really seems like to me actually happened. Was that he saw like a meteorite coming in, flashing different colors, and he was like, I don't know what this is. It must be God. And so, I mean, the people back in the day, anything they couldn't explain got written off as God.
Yeah.
So like you had like Thor with like, the lightning and the clouds, and that's, the easiest one to see, because it's like we had no idea like why it was happening, so it's got to be a God doing it. And then, so...
I even wonder about the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
which I saw something about that the other day.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Like, these cities were wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been a meteorite. That could have been based on a real story where a meteor struck this city or these two cities. And, I mean, what do you think, like, ancient people would have thought?
Right?
They would have thought that some god smote, those cities.
Smite.
Yep.
But, no, I read this thing about this just the other day. It was like a month or two ago.
Yeah.
That this researcher he was an archaeologist. He was trying to find the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he was using this really old map that showed where they were at on the map. And it was hard to, like, figure out, like, where they were. But then they found two cities that were about the right description. So most of the mainstream scholars that were criticizing him said, you know what, you're probably right. Those are probably the ancient cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. But there's no like confirmation on it yet. They're still excavating.
Yeah.
But when they found out, when they got there to those two cities, that it was immediately obvious that they had been destroyed by a near impact. Like the one that happened in Russia that there's videos of on the internet, where the meteorite comes in and explodes in the sky.
Yeah.
And so that's what they think happened. They think a meteorite came in and exploded just above the cities and destroyed the cities. And it supposedly, if I remember what the article said, it was like a 1,200, or I think it was a 1,200 feet radius. Or like it didn't just destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. It might have been miles. But it was a big enough area that destroyed two other cities next to them that didn't get written about. So it destroyed 4 cities. So God went a little overboard.
Yeah.
But yes.
It makes so much sense when you look at like these old myths and legends that way. Like,
right.
Like these stories probably came, like the flood. Like there was probably some flood at some point.
Yeah.
What do you think ancient people are going to think? Like where do you think these ancient people are going to think these, catastrophes came from? Well, they're going to think it was some god. Like it makes perfect sense that we would have these stories from a naturalistic perspective.
Right. So, I mean, it's like, I agree. There's a lot of these times where you see like a grain of salt to it, where you're like, there is a grain of truth here. I can agree that they're trying to convey something that they saw that was bewildering enough to have them carve it in stone. Like, so it must have been a crazy experience.
Yeah.
Or just killed thousands of people, whatever it was. And so it was very significant. It was a very big event, a very big thing they wanted everyone to know about, and they wanted it to last forever, which is why they carved it in stone.
Yeah.
But, like, at the same time, it obviously isn't what they thought it was.
Yeah.
They were just trying to convey what they thought it was.
And the story still would have grown over time. I mean, they're being passed down orally for no telling how many generations.
Right.
So there's even, not only would probably the people who witnessed these events would have assumed it was a god, but also, like, after it being passed down for so many generations, it grows, and eventually you have the story of this, man who offers his daughters up to be raped by these terrible people, and then he goes out into the mountains and impregnates his daughters.
Right. So, I mean, it's insane. But, I mean, yeah, there's probably a grain of truth to it. I'm sure that, like, somebody raped somebody somewhere in the Bible. It's probably what happened. But, yeah, the rest of the story I'm not sure so much about.
Yeah, just like the Israelites. Like, I assume that the Israelites were a real tribe, you know, and
Yeah.
probably a lot of those stories actually happened.
Right,
You had
yeah.
all this tribal warfare. You know, I absolutely believe there's some truth to that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, because there are certain places that like we know of, like supposedly. Like I don't know, like myself supposedly, but I've heard a lot of people go to visit the city of Jerusalem. I've never actually, I'm not, I'm sorry, not Jericho.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't actually know personally. I haven't cared to look into see whether or not it exists. But supposedly there's an ancient city that was destroyed and ransacked. The walls are definitely down, and so they're like, oh, well, this is direct proof out of the Bible because this city is here right where the
Yeah.
Bible said it is. And it's like I agree that that the city might have existed, but doesn't mean the whole thing is true. Like there was I wrote another thing about a city of Vishnu, an Indian god, and so there was this Indian god. Vishnu was their like creator.
Yeah.
He's not like Krishna. He's a little different. Krishna
Yeah.
was like more
Their
like kind of
savior.
yeah. He was more like Jesus a little bit, but
Yeah.
so there's the city of Vishnu that he founded. That he showed up and there was all these people that were like suffering and dying, and he was like, we're gonna make a city here and I'm gonna make it great for you guys. And he did, and and it says in their holy book, it says like how the city was, where it was, the layout. It's very, very specific about it. And so they were looking for it and they found it. And it was also destroyed. But in the story, him and another god got angry with each other and they had a fight. And the other god came across on the clouds to his city and he was like, I will defend my city. And he's like, if I can't, it will sink. And so they fight for like a week or something, like shooting at each other, like back and forth, like with these crazy weapons of mass destruction. It's kind of awesome, really. But so then eventually the city falls and Vishnu is killed by the other god, or at least he cannot defend the city.
Yeah.
And so the city falls and he goes down with the city, supposedly. Like he may not have actually like passed away or died, but like he just like the city ends up getting defeated and it sinks beneath the waves. And that's where they found it, right where like geologically they said it would, under the waves.
So this confirms the Vedas
confirms
and the
all of
Bhagavad
it,
Gita,
right?
and yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like, no, it doesn't like, just because you have a grain of truth to something doesn't confirm the whole thing.
Yeah.
It just shows you that something significant happened that somebody is trying to portray. They're trying to tell you something happened. And a lot of times these stories end up becoming proverbial, or they try to have some kind of moral lesson with it, like the people were bad there, so God destroyed them.
Yeah.
Like, but ultimately it was just something happened and everybody shit their pants and had to write about it.
Yeah. It is funny, like with Answers in Genesis, and I think one of my books up here, Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh McDowell.
It's a good
Like
book.
you have these people who point out these real people, real cities that we discovered later that were mentioned in the Bible, and they want to say that's evidence, the proof that the Bible stories are true. But then, yeah, you look at stuff like the city of Vishnu, which I wasn't aware of, but like in the Iliad, you have the city of Troy, which was missing. We didn't know that Troy existed until it was the 18th or 19th century.
It was 1973.
They ended up finding it. That doesn't confirm that the Iliad is an actual, like,
Right.
No,
yeah. They've even, funny thing is they found skulls on some Greek islands that only have one eyeball.
Yeah,
And
I've seen that.
They traced their DNA and were like, okay, this is a specific genetic like abnormality where their eyes never split and their skull never fully formed in birth, and they ended up dying. And does that mean like cyclopses were real and they were running around eating people? No. It just means that some people had a birth defect where they only had one eye and they died from it. So, I mean, there's a lot of like crazy things like that where it's like, how did this even get poeticized in the first place? Like, what?
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, Tanner's, he's out because Europe. I mean, what? It's probably like 3 o'clock over there.
Probably. Let's see. See, Neil's been going. Neil's probably gonna be wrapping up pretty soon.
It is not bad vape juice manual. It's very tasty. It tastes like cinnamon waffles.
I think he was talking about the green smoke you saw in the sky.
You're right. It might have been.
Yeah.
It's terrible vape juice from the gods.
So what do you think about, maybe we shouldn't get into this, what do you think about Ancient Aliens?
I liked it for a while. I thought it was a really good theory at first on the surface.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. I really entertained it, was the idea. It was like, it brought me a lot of joy to like watch it and be like, whoa.
Yeah.
But then they start going a step too far with it, and they're like, well, what if aliens killed the dinosaurs?
Oh my God.
And you're like, no, dude, like, no.
No.
Like, you were doing great until then. Like, so it's like, it's always like fun for a little while until they just go way too far with it. Like, there was like one episode where they were talking about like how the aliens might have influenced like the Third Reich and Hitler and the Nazis, and I was like, I don't know. Probably not. Are you saying aliens are really Nazis? Like, what are you trying to say, History Channel? Like, you know what I mean? Man. So I mean, it was a cool theory on the surface and fun to entertain, because it did like make a lot of puzzle pieces like fit together.
It does.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you get into the rest of it, and you're like,
Yeah.
So that's what I thought about it. I liked it and I enjoyed it, but then problems.
I've never really watched the show, but I have. Especially like back in like 2017, I was very much entertaining the theory.
I think I watched it up until like season 7 or 8. So I mean, and it was funny though, because I'd have those episodes where like, say they were talking about like how the pyramids might have been like an ancient alien structure. And I was like, well, okay, well, you got a little bit, but then they start saying like how they used it to like refuel their aircrafts, and I was like,
bit of a stretch.
Yeah, so just a little. And so I mean, it was like there were so many episodes that I would just end up just like turning off, where I was just like, this is no. Aliens didn't kill the dinosaurs. Like, come on. Yeah. But I mean, it only fits in one particular paradigm, in my opinion. Is like, it only fits if and only if the world is like able to form life, but not yet, and then they come here and they seed it, because it's like what we're trying to do to Mars, right? We're trying to like seed Mars, but they would have had to come here from like way far away from somewhere else. Yeah. And from what we've seen with Hubble now, more than likely there was a world closer, bigger, and probably safer to come and land on anyway. So why would they even come here in the first place? No. Like, and the only ever reason I could end up thinking about it was like, well, it would be because there was already life here and they could see that. That's the only reason I could think of as to why they'd come to this little Earth when they could go to like all these other like bigger Earths that have more room, definitely more resources, like a sun that's not going to go supernova in a billion years because it's already just went supernova and it's now a dwarf. Like, there's a lot of better choices out there that are close by relatively, you know? I mean, like, there was one that's like 4 billion light years away or something. And it's like, not billion, I'm sorry.
No, there's closer stars than that.
Yeah, it was like 4 light years, I think.
See, there's
or 400.
Proxima Centauri and Alpha Centauri that are, I mean, how far away are they?
The one I was thinking of was Kepler 2b. I remember the name. I just can't think of how far away it was. I know it was like relatively close.
Which I don't know about planets there.
It was just the one. It was just that one, Kepler 2b is what it was. Yeah. So, see, like, Alpha Centauri is like 4 light years.
4 light years. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's just plenty of other places that they would go to, I would think, unless they came here for, like, one particular reason. And I don't see, like, why that would be unless life was already here. Because if they were going to seed the planet, they would definitely go to a better one if they could cross galaxies. Like, so, I just, I mean, so there's a lot of issues with it, but like I said, that's the only, like, reason I could really see it. And I don't know, because then it starts getting really far-fetched. Because then it's like, okay, they did come here. And they get here and they're gods. Like, why? Because of their technology? or because like, and there's all kinds of crazy theories like the physics are different to them here because they were living on a planet that had like stronger gravity, and so like I don't see how that'd make you a god, but okay,
No.
sure, you could
I
jump
would
higher.
I would guess it would be the technology,
Right.
most likely.
Yeah, so it would have to be.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always thought it was interesting.
Yeah,
I thought
mean,
the most
it
interesting.
is definitely interesting, and it's fun to like play around with.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've always thought the most interesting though was what hooked me to begin with was you have in most mythology, Greek mythology, and most of these you have the gods coming down and breeding with humans, right?
Yes.
And then you have in Genesis, you have the sons of God, the angels coming down and creating the Nephilim, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that was interesting.
Okay, yeah.
And that's where a lot of these ancient alien conspiracists get the idea that aliens came down and they bred with humans.
No, right, yeah. And see, for me, I mean, I was interested in that aspect because it would be, like they were having all these theories about people that were different than other people, like Einstein or whatever, might have had like trace lineage of like being a Nephilim or something. And so like I always thought it was interesting, but what really hooked me on like the theories was the technology aspect of it, because there was all these like technologies, or what sounds like misunderstood technologies in a lot of the ancient times. Like say like in the Bible you have several. You have the Ark of the Covenant. You have like Aaron's staff.
Yeah, they want to
or
say
Aaron's
that's some
rod.
kind of battery or something.
And so like you like, and the staff, like when you think of it from like a technological aspect, it kind of just starts blowing your mind on if it was real and if it could do the things the Bible said it could do. What is that? Like, what is it made out of? Like, is it some? It makes absolutely no sense at all. You have a staff that can like call down the 10 plagues of Egypt. It can like part a sea. It can like, you can strike a rock and make water come out of it. Like, so it's like, what? Like, what is this piece of technology if you're thinking of it that way anyway? And so then and it wasn't that one particularly that hooked me. It was some of the ones from other stories. Like from Greek mythology was a big one for me. Was in the story of Hercules or Heracles, and Achilles also. Achilles was the hero of Troy. Hercules is, the demigod from Zeus that does the 12 labors.
And Achilles was dipped into the river of Styx by his mother, but,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, see, so the river of Styx supposedly was like, had this like elixir of the gods in it.
Yeah.
Because if you look deep enough in Greek mythology, what you find is that these gods had a specific food and a specific drink, and that's only their diet. It was like they had a food of the gods and they had a water of the gods.
Yeah.
And the water of gods was called like this elixir, right? And so supposedly, like some of them say, like you said, like he was dipped in the river of the Styx.
Ambrosia was the food?
Yeah, I think so.
Huh.
Yeah. And so then you have like Hercules, like, or Heracles was like, he was going to be dipped in it, but then they like dropped him. And so it's like he got a full immersion.
Yeah.
To whereas like Achilles had everything immersed except his like Achilles tendon, so it was like his weak spot. Whereas Hercules just like fell in it.
Yeah.
And so like you had this idea of like, I was wondering like, of course if it was like ancient aliens and if it was real, so you have to do all these what ifs, but when you're entertaining the idea, you're like, what actually was that? Like, did they make it here? Or did they like make it there and like bring it with them? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, what is this water that will make me immortal and super powerful or nearly immortal?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was just like fun to entertain and fun to like think about, but it like in reality would have probably found it already, unless it's just, like the Garden of Eden, it just didn't exist.
Yeah. You do have to do a lot of gymnastics to try to tie all these stories together, which
really
was what
do.
I try to do and what, like some people we know try to do in some women's studies. And
Right. I mean, it's still fun, and it's and it does make some of the pieces like connect, which is why you start like getting into it in the first place, because you feel like you're onto something.
Yeah.
And then,
So that's how a lot of conspiracies are, like all these presidential conspiracies where you're like, oh, look, Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy, I don't know, they have all these similarities, there must be something there, but it's like, if you look long enough, you can start making a lot of seemingly strange ties between a lot of things. You know?
Yes. And then, like, you get to it and you're like, or it could just be coincidences.
Yeah.
And there's no actual conspiracy theory.
Or it could just be that they all are inspired by the same real stuff, you know.
Yes.
Immortality. Well, that's just a common thing to think about.
Could
so, you
just
know.
be, yes. They're all inspired by the exact same thing. And so they're all writing stories on the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it gets to a fun place when you get conspiratorial. I think, my favorite one, because I went through and like started looking them up back in the day. My favorite ones were always the ones that were like somewhat real, where it was like you had something there of substance. You didn't have much, but you had something.
No.
And you're like, okay, well, this is fun to entertain because you do have something. You just don't have much about it. Like, supposedly, and I remember it was a long time when I looked up this one, so I don't know if anybody's ever like figured it out since then, but supposedly there was like this meteorite that was coming in over Siberia, and this like cauldron like rises up out of the ground and like shoots it out of the sky, and then like lowers back into the ground, and everybody's just like blown away and it's like, what? And so they get all these researchers and go down there and like try to dig it up, and all their equipment starts failing, and like there's all these like electronic malfunctions and stuff, and when you hear the story it sounds like it's just a conspiracy. And then they have like a couple of photographs of them. And you're like, wait, what? And so then you're wondering, are the photos have got to be fake then, right? This has got to be like some kind of like creepypasta or something.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't actually know if it's true, but like if it was, like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like to have something that's like an anti-planetary gun. It's like not a anti-air, but like planetary, where it shoots stuff that's coming in from outer space.
Yeah.
But like then like supposedly according to the site about it, it was like dated like back to 10,000 BC. So I don't know who could actually like build a gun that can shoot asteroids down in 10,000 BC or 8,000 BC. But yeah, it was like you have like a little bit there.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool to like look into a little bit, but then the more you delve into it, the more it gets like
yeah. Especially the 10,000 BC thing. Though.
Yeah. With it being that old is like,
Yeah. I think which I've gotten away from conspiracy theories for the most part, you know. I don't believe in the ancient alien stuff anymore. I mean, it is interesting, but...
Yeah, that part of my life is definitely behind me.
To me, though, still, I think the conspiracies that are most convincing are conspiracies about what the United States government is up to.
Yes.
And Disney conspiracies.
Yes.
Like, if there's a conspiracy theory about Disney, I think that's
wanna
probably true.
It's probably true, yeah. You're right, though.
It's
like, I saw this one the other day about why Sora from Kingdom Hearts isn't getting into Smash. And everybody speculated for the longest time. Cliff Argyle, who was in the chat, he used to always say that Sora is never going to be in Smash because Sora is a partially owned character. He's a collaboration between Square Enix and Disney. And so you've got to go to too much to try to get both companies okay with it to be able to do it.
Yeah, kind of like the Spider-Man deal.
Yeah, especially with Disney, everything's so much harder because Disney keeps everything like mine. Like they're very like close to the chest with their IPs and their things. And so you're never going to get it to happen. And then it was actually 3 days ago that somebody was doing it was like Game Informer or something, was doing an interview. And they were like, we've approached Disney like several times about getting Sora in Smash, but Disney just turns us down every time and says, no, it's not happening. So it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But that was like a conspiracy theory for the longest time that has been proven true. Yeah. It was Disney all along.
Yeah. Disney is scary.
Cheat codes against Egypt.
Yeah.
That's good. That's pretty good.
Yeah. I guess we're at the 2-hour mark, or a little bit past it now.
Oh, we are, aren't we?
Probably start wrapping it up.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Down.
So is there anything else you want to get out there?
Probably just if you are having issues with like deconversion, seek out people who are like-minded or people who just don't seem very judgmental at all, and you'll at least have you'll have a start at making new friends, because if you do deconvert, you are going to lose a lot of friends. Some of them you won't.
Yeah.
But for a lot of the time you will lose a lot. And so there's a site that the Atheist Experience always tells people to go to, is like Deconversion Help or deconversiontherapy.org or something. I can't remember exactly what it is, but if you want to know it, they reference it almost every single video. So there are places out there for you, and yeah, there are people that can help.
Yeah, I think it is important. Like,
and you're not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone. I get messages, like private messages, from all kinds of people that I know personally. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are even still in church, and they're just not out to their family. But there are so many like ex-Christians out there that most people don't know about. But you're definitely not alone.
Yeah.
You're not crazy.
Yep.
You're not a terrible person.
Nope, exactly.
Yeah.
You're not a terrible person. You're not crazy. And there's probably a lot of other people just like you. You're definitely not alone.
Yeah. But you do need to be careful, like, before you come out as no longer being Christian.
Right.
Like you were saying.
Because it can affect your situation.
Yeah. You know, if you're not in a good place, if you're not, like, financially stable, like, financially independent, and you don't have people there that are going to take care of you and be there for you, support you, just wait. You know, you should wait.
Yeah, indeed. Because there's always a right time for everything.
Yeah.
And it's like if your situation's not very good and you're dependent on people that you wouldn't think would like kick you out, but then you start, like, you say you're like living alone with you and your wife or something, and like she's a big Christian, you're having issues, and you try to talk to her about it, and she decides, oh, well, we're done now.
Yeah.
And then, like, if you're not financially stable on your own, then you're gonna have an issue now.
Yeah.
Like, so there's definitely a time for everything. Like, save up some money and make sure that you're gonna be okay before you do that, because it is gonna affect your life.
Yeah.
In different ways.
Whether you're living with your significant other or your parents, whatever it is, make sure you can, or at least you've got somebody else you can go stay with.
Yeah.
Make sure you have some friends that are there for you, whether you're religious or not. You know.
Right.
So.
Because, I mean, it could be just anybody, your significant other, I mean, it could be that you're living at home with, like, your family at the moment because you're in between jobs, like, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah. So if you don't have all that, just stay in the closet, you know.
I mean, just Harry Potter, bro. Like,
yeah.
Stay in the cupboard. Yeah. Don't go to Hogwarts yet.
Yeah, but we're going to roll this one up, and I think we're going to hop over to anybody watching now. We're going to try to hop over into Neil's after party, if you want to do that.
I'm down.
I'm sure I can get him to send us a link so we can join afterwards. So if you want to catch us in a few minutes, go watch Neil's stream he's got going right now, and we should be in the after party. So, but thanks everyone for watching. Really appreciate everybody in the chat, and appreciate Travis showing up here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, it was a really good conversation. We gotta get Tanner in here,
Indeed.
Tyler.
Right.
But
for sure.
Yeah. But we'll see you all in the next worship service. Close this down.